the Manhattan Institute is proud to present the 2020 Hamilton Award Dinner Eventcast. Tonight, we'll be honoring this year's recipients of the Alexander Hamilton Award, including Eugene Meyer, President and CEO of the Federalist Society, and Leonard, co-chairman and former Executive Vice President of the Federalist Society, and Daniel S. Loeb, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Investment Officer of Third Point, LLC. The Manhattan Institute would like to thank tonight's event sponsors. Your generous support enables us to carry out the important mission of developing and advancing ideas that foster economic choice and individual responsibility. To learn how you can help support future events like this one, please visit our website at manhattan-institute.org/support. And now, here is your host for the evening, Reihan Salam, the president of the Manhattan Institute.
Good evening. I'm Reihan Salam, president of the Manhattan Institute, and I'm honored to welcome you all to the 20th annual Alexander Hamilton Award ceremony. Hamilton is a special event in the life of the Institute. I know I speak for all of us when I say I look forward to being able to gather together soon. But for tonight, I'm grateful for our ability to connect virtually to celebrate three outstanding individuals, Eugene Meyer, Leonard, and Daniel Loeb. Their extraordinary commitment to building a freer country whose opportunities are available to every citizen offers an inspiring example for all of us. We're facing formidable challenges here in America. Our economy has been battered by the virus. Our cities are struggling with rising disorder, and our political and cultural divides are being thrown into sharp relief. The history of MI, however, reminds us that crises are also opportunities. MI was founded in the late 1970s when New York's finances teetered on the edge of bankruptcy, and the national economy was mired in stagflation. But rather than abandon the city as a lost cause, the Manhattan Institute advanced ideas that helped bring it back to life. In the 1990s, New Yorkers made up their mind that it was time for the 30-year crime wave to end. Drawing on the broken windows theory of policing pioneered at the Manhattan Institute, the Giuliani and Bloomberg administrations took back control of the streets, sparking an urban renaissance that has lifted the fortunes of millions. The first decade of this century was bookended by 9/11 and the financial crisis. And in both cases, ideas that took shape at the Manhattan Institute helped our country get back on its feet. The task ahead for us now is to reignite an economic expansion that reaches every corner of the country, to once again make our cities springboards of opportunity, and to remind our fellow citizens that America is defined by its energy and optimism. All of this is possible, but it will require principled leaders armed with good ideas. Supplying those good ideas is, of course, the work of the Manhattan Institute, work that is impossible without your generous support. With New York facing the greatest economic crisis in its modern history, we've launched New York City Reborn, an all-hands-on-deck effort to make city government leaner and more effective, free entrepreneurs big and small to follow their dreams, and give families a wide range of high-quality schools to choose from. And just this month, with cities around the country facing a sharp increase in crime and disorder, we've launched a new initiative on policing and public safety that builds on decades of work, resting on a simple premise that all of us deserve to be safe from criminal violence, regardless of color or creed, and that effective policing strategies need to be defended, not defunded. And there's much more for us to celebrate. From the rapidly growing reach of City Journal, which now reaches well over 1 million readers a month, to our growing suite of virtual events, which have reached hundreds of thousands of viewers to date, to the Adam Smith Society, which is busy cultivating the next generation of free market-minded business leaders at universities around the country. Many of you in the audience tonight have responded to these extraordinary times with displays of extraordinary commitment to our shared work. For that, we are deeply grateful. To those of you in the audience who are new to our work, we invite you to make a contribution and join us. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially begin tonight's program, please welcome the Manhattan Institute's chairman, Paul Singer.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul E. Singer, founder and co-CEO of Elliott Management Corp. And chairman of the Manhattan Institute.
Good evening. I'm Paul Singer, chairman of the Manhattan Institute. I'm pleased that this year's Alexander Hamilton Award celebration has raised $2.7 million in support of the Institute's programs, policy research, and City Journal magazine. Thanks to everyone who has donated and supported our dedicated and effective team. Your continued support remains essential to help MI meet the challenges of the moment head on. My fellow trustees and I regret not being able to share this celebration with you in person, although I must admit I don't know the actual location of my tuxedo. However, there's an upside of presenting the awards via webcast. More people can see the event, and same with MI's virtual event series, an innovation born of necessity. These events on urgent topics like race, riots, and the police, and the Great Awakening are reaching hundreds of thousands of viewers across the country. We're also reaching new audiences closer to home. If you're watching tonight, Mayor de Blasio, better late than never. In what has been the most difficult and tumultuous year for America in recent memory, the team at the Manhattan Institute, under the leadership of its president, Reihan Salam, has risen to the occasion. The stakes have never been higher. It's been said that as goes New York, so goes the nation. Hopefully that does not also apply to current-day California. With New York City reeling from the pandemic, as well as the economic crash, civil disorder, and a spike in violent crime, and embroiled in a debate over policing, MI has been a beacon of reason. MI's scholars are leading with ideas to restore order, prosperity, and opportunity, not just in New York, but in cities across the country, while presenting a national policy agenda to address the economic repercussions of the pandemic. The Manhattan Institute, more than any other institution, is best suited to help America navigate today's crises, because we've been there before. When urban America was on its heels in the early 1990s, MI's ensemble of contrarian intellectuals, writing under a new publication, then called New York, the City Journal, set forth an agenda on public safety, education, welfare, and the economy that became the policy foundation of the urban renaissance in New York and elsewhere that took hold over the next 20 years. In the present crisis, MI has gone back to its roots in urban policy with a roster of talented new scholars like Raphael Manguel and Coleman Hughes, joining veterans like Heather McDonald, Jason Riley, and Ed Glazer. They have stood firmly for the importance of public safety, explaining how the poor and minorities suffer the most from the rise in crime. With a grounding in empirical data and calls for better data where it is lacking, they have debunked the most pernicious falsehoods being spread about the police, while advancing sensible reforms to improve police-community relations. The cascading crises of 2020 have also created a new climate of receptivity for MI's research and ideas, including in cities which have been avatars of left-wing policy ideas in recent years. Don't take my word for it. As always, we have data on our side. This July, MI partnered with Echelon Insights to conduct a survey of New York City residents. The poll found that a majority of New Yorkers approve of the NYPD, and the majorities of New Yorkers in both parties support lowering taxes, school choice, deregulation, and other conservative common sense policies. Mayor de Blasio, in contrast, had an approval rating below 50%. James Freeman summarized these hopeful results in the Wall Street Journal. Quote, "The survey suggests that America's biggest city may now be home to a rising number of new conservatives who have been mugged by the reality of leftist governance." Close quote. With your continued support, the Manhattan Institute stands ready not just to welcome these new conservatives with open arms, but to arm them with ideas. MI is thrilled to present the Hamilton Award to this year's honorees, Eugene Meyer, Leonard Leo, and Dan Loeb. Because I have the privilege of introducing Dan later, I'll now say a few words about Gene and Leonard, whose influence on public life stands out even more in light of the current debate over the future of the courts. In the battle of ideas, few organizations have been as strategic or as consequential as the Federalist Society, both in terms of its influence on the intellectual climate at law schools and the network of legal professionals it has cultivated, whose members can be found throughout the federal bench, including the Supreme Court. The Federalist Society has been the inspiration for the Manhattan Institute's Adam Smith Society on business school campuses, and I thank Gene and Leonard for the guidance they have provided us there. For the formal presentation of the Hamilton Award to Gene and Leonard, we will turn things over to former Attorney General Michael Mukasey and Heather Higgins, President of the Randolph Foundation and Chair of the Independent Women's Forum. But first, as tonight marks the 20th anniversary of the Alexander Hamilton Award dinner, MI invites you to join us in looking back at 2 decades of honoring civic excellence. Thank you.
And now, we welcome you to join us in reflecting on 2 decades of this award series, honoring leaders who have contributed greatly to the Institute's rich history and mission to promote public safety, economic growth, and individual freedom.
Looking around the room tonight causes me to say it's really nice to be back in the big time.
Well, David, I can't thank you enough, but in a moment I'm going to try to. I really am.
Thank you very, very much for this award.
I'm proud to accept this award on behalf of our 36,000 police officers and 15,000 civilian employees.
Academics who say that there's no evidence that broken windows reduces crime are either lying or ignorant.
The basic mission for which police exist is the prevention of crime and disorder.
A college bureaucrat gazing on this gathering would undoubtedly conclude that she was in a, quote, unsafe space.
We should not debate the desirability of negotiation, but we can debate the result.
The fundamental issue that this nation must face is that we cannot continue to divide ourselves into 2 groups.
Pound for pound, that is relative to our size and budget, no institution has had a greater impact on public policy and public life.
We are allies in a very noble cause, the development of fresh and noble ideas.
If you have a good idea, it'll build no matter how you screw it up, and boy, we screwed it up.
And in this, the Manhattan Institute is a luminous guide.
Originality and insight with which you illuminate problems help to clear the path for solutions for many people.
MI's vision has always been one of reform. It is not zero-sum.
Like the Manhattan Institute, we rely on the power of an idea to guide our approach.
What this organization did for this city, when this city was on its back, in a way of thoughts and ideas and suggestions, can never be repaid.
And we need to support a parent's right to choose the school that they send their kids to.
This is not about the stuff that makes the papers. It's about helping me save a generation of children.
America needs MI more than ever, and the world needs MI more than ever.
This has been a brilliant evening.
And now to introduce our first 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award winner, please welcome Judge Michael Mukasey, former U.S. District Judge for the Southern District of New York and former Attorney General of the United States.
It's both a pleasure and an honor to introduce Eugene B. Meyer, President of the Federalist Society
as the recipient of this year's Hamilton Award. Gene has been involved with the Federalist Society for more than 30 years, which he has served as president, as executive director, and as CEO. The Federalist Society began as the vision of a small group of law students in 1982, a vision of promoting a jurisprudence based on the text of the founding documents of our republic. The theory of a text-based originalism that emerged from that beginning has become steadily more influential among law students, legal academics and theorists, and judges, so that the Federalist Society now comprises more than 65,000 members with chapters at 150 law schools. This growth and expanded influence has come about under the stewardship of Eugene Meyer and is due substantially to his efforts. Gene has helped lay the foundation for promoting a rule of law based solidly on the Constitution as written and on preserving the principles of limited government and separation of powers codified in that document. Anyone concerned about the future of our liberty and our courts, including but not limited to today's and tomorrow's lawyers, academics, and judges, is deeply in debt to Eugene Meyer. I should add that Gene's skill at strategizing is not limited to promoting the spread of originalism across the legal landscape. He also plays a mean game of chess and is ranked as an international master, which is one step below grandmaster. Many organizations have flattered the Federalist Society in the most sincere way possible, by modeling their own activities on those of the Federalist Society. The Manhattan Institute has so modeled its own Adam Smith Society. Unlike the Federalist Society, the Adam Smith Society does not focus its activities on law schools, but has chapters at 32 top MBA degree granting schools and a network of 13,000 MBAs and professionals. The Adam Smith Society educates students and the next generation of business and civic leaders about the moral and philosophical foundations of capitalism. Gene sits on the advisory board of the Adam Smith Society and was one of the original thinkers behind its development and advancement. His dedication to ensuring that our youth absorb the essential lesson that liberty depends on preserving the fundamentals of our constitutionally prescribed form of government makes him a fit recipient of the 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award. Please join me, virtually but enthusiastically, in welcoming and appreciating Eugene Meyer.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Manhattan Institute would like to welcome 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award recipient, Eugene Meyer, President and CEO of the Federalist Society.
Thank you, Judge Mukasey, for that incredibly kind introduction. I'm especially honored to receive the Alexander Hamilton Award. This is because the Manhattan Institute exemplifies the type of serious discussion and analysis we desperately need and receive far too little of these days. It's also because of the Adam Smith Society. As Judge Mukasey mentioned, I have the honor to sit on their advisory board. The Adam Smith Society has had considerable success introducing the principles of a free society to business schools and to business leaders. They have done brilliantly with their entrepreneurial efforts, and they should make you all proud of the excellent job they do. I want to focus on something close to the heart of both the Manhattan Institute and the Federalist Society: freedom of thought. Reason, debate, and discussion are rooted in Western civilization and constitutional democracy. For America, the First Amendment protects not only freedom of speech, but also freedom of religion. In other words, the freedom to commit heresy. Our founding generation adopted the First Amendment even though they held strong beliefs about the most important questions in life, beliefs that were far more important to many of them than life and death. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor in support of the principles soon enshrined in the Constitution. They were committed to the idea that with reason and discussion, we could try this experiment in government. In Alexander Hamilton's famous words, quote, "It seems to have been reserved to the people of this country to decide by their conduct and example the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political institutions on accident and force, close quote. The founders wanted these freedoms for all because they believed this is how civilization flourishes. The cornerstones of Western civilization, the Judeo-Christian ethic, come in part from hearing opposing views and learning from them. But heresy? Surely that is a step too far. Yes, freedom of speech is all very well, but heresy risks eternal damnation. I think they had two reasons. First, again in the words of Hamilton, quote, "For in politics as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by persecution," close quote. The second reason reflects one of the great wisdoms of the Constitution. A flourishing society does not coerce its citizens to choose between their most deeply held beliefs and loyalty to the government unless absolutely necessary. To do so risks tearing society apart. To quote Hamilton once again, quote, "Remember, civil and religious liberty always go together. If the foundation of one be sapped, the other will fall, of course," close quote. Parenthetically, we are perhaps seeing the wisdom of that warning today in some of the events unfolding in our cities across America. So it is no coincidence that the First Amendment covers both freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Both protect freedom of thought, reason, and discussion, the building blocks for developing and maintaining a flourishing and good society. I look forward to the Federalist Society and the Manhattan Institute continuing to do work to defend freedom of thought, reason, and serious discussion. Thank you again for this award.
And now to introduce our next 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award winner, please welcome Heather Higgins, CEO of Independent Women's Voice and Chairman of Independent Women's Forum.
It is my express pleasure, privilege, and honor to introduce Leonard Leo, of whom the Washington Post says, "Few people outside government have more influence over judicial appointments." For once, the Washington Post gets it right. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. The Washington Post never gets it right, but in this case, they are less wrong than usual. It is not the case that few people outside government have more influence over judicial appointments than our honoree tonight does. No one outside of government has more influence over judicial appointments, and arguably only one person inside government has more influence over them. Nor should you assume that the Washington Post meant that as we do, as a compliment. Rather, they're making a target. But that's itself a compliment. You know you're doing something right when those who don't think like you want to try and take you down. Leonard joined the Federalist Society over 25 years ago, was formerly its executive vice president, and currently serves as its co-chairman. For the few of you who aren't in on this open secret, Leonard is the Cardinal Richelieu of the American judiciary, as well as of much of the good work being done in the conservative movement. Others may have the power and riches of kings, but we know where the real center of gravity and impact is: Leonard. Through his work, the Federalist Society has become one of the most effective organizations in the United States. 5 of the 9 sitting Supreme Court justices, that would be those who believe, well, at least most of the time, that the role of the court is to interpret law, not to make it whole cloth out of current political penumbras, are current or former members of the Federalist Society. Leonard has advised the White House on judicial selection and assisted Justices Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh with their confirmation processes before the United States Senate. Leonard Leo is a principled advocate for fidelity to the words of the founders. Our job is not to seek particular outcomes, he has said. Our job is to find people who are going to demonstrate fidelity to the framers' Constitution and to the laws as they are drafted and passed by Congress or the states. Leonard was appointed by President George W. Bush to 3 terms as chairman of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom and was the U.S. delegate to the UN Council and UN Commission on Human Rights during the Bush administration. He was also a recipient of the 2009 Bradley Prize. And just as importantly, Leonard is a genuinely brave and principled individual whom I feel fortunate to be able to call a friend. in honor of his fine, consequential work in shaping the landscape of American jurisprudence for decades to come. It is my pleasure to welcome Leonard Leo, 2020 recipient of the Alexander Hamilton Award.
The Manhattan Institute would now like to welcome 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award recipient Leonard Leo, co-chairman and former executive vice president of the Federalist Society.
It is a privilege to receive the 20th Annual Hamilton Award, along with my friend and colleague of many years, Eugene Meyer. Your recognition of the Federalist Society's work is deeply humbling. On behalf of everybody who has contributed to the Society's efforts and success, I thank you. I'm a longtime admirer of the Manhattan Institute. Since 1977, you've helped foster a society where all people can flourish. We share the same goal. Like the Manhattan Institute, the Federalist Society envisions a country where the rule of law is respected, where individual freedom is protected, and where human dignity is given force through the structural features of our Constitution. This vision is as old as America itself. It stems from the timeless principles of the Declaration of Independence, the equality of mankind, the existence of inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These principles are the foundation of a thriving society. Their implementation is directly connected to the ability of all people to realize their calling. The principles of the Declaration are self-evident, but they are not self-enforcing. That is why the founders gave us the Constitution. It is the mechanism that protects individual freedom and human dignity. The Constitution's design is everything. When most people think of it, they think of the words of the Bill of Rights, or maybe they think of Congress or the presidency or the Supreme Court. Now, of course, these are all very important, but they are not what makes the Constitution unique. What's more important is the space between the words, the clash between the institutions. That is where we find the separation of powers, checks and balances, federalism, and the sovereignty of the American people. These are the essential restraints on government power, the external and internal controls on those who wield power over us. As the namesake of the Hamilton Award aptly said, government has been instituted because the passions of man will not conform to the dictates of reason and justice without constraint. Taken together, these internal and external restraints comprise the structural Constitution. It is on this structure that our freedom depends. The structural Constitution is the reason that America became, and still remains, the freest and most remarkable country the world has ever known. Unfortunately, the past century has seen the slow erosion of the structural Constitution. It's been undermined by presidents of both parties and bipartisan majorities in Congress. Worst of all, it has been undermined by the branch of government charged with upholding it. The federal judiciary, and especially the Supreme Court, spent decades breaking down the barriers that protect our freedom. The Federalist Society exists to right this wrong. The federal judiciary is often the structural Constitution's last line of defense. It had fallen away from that noble task because it had fallen prey to ideas that are incompatible with our experiment in self-government. To solve this problem, the Federalist Society has spent nearly 40 years reviving the ideas that have long been ignored in legal circles. We have built the infrastructure on the law school campus and in the legal culture generally to revive the ideal of limited constitutional government. We are now seeing a gradual restoration of the judiciary that recognizes and upholds the structural Constitution. The last 4 years in particular have seen a significant shift in the judicial landscape. The ideas that were for some time far outside the legal mainstream, ideas like originalism and textualism and judicial enforcement of the separation of powers, are now on the cusp of becoming the legal mainstream. More than ever in my own lifetime, the Supreme Court is enforcing the limits on government power and recognizing the separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism, not as quaint aspirations, but as concrete obligations that underpin individual freedom. For the first time in any of our lifetimes, the Supreme Court itself is close to reviving the structural Constitution, and this is good news for the bolstering of human worth and dignity. We are seeing similar trends with the federal appellate courts, where in just the last 4 years, we have witnessed about a 30% increase in constitutional jurists. And there are record-breaking trends as well in the states, with their Supreme Courts and state attorneys general. What does the future hold? There is an unprecedented number of judges and a rising generation of lawyers committed to this vision. This is a renaissance in our legal culture. I am convinced that this is one reason why the left is so unhinged and radical right now. Rising generations have been trained in textualist and originalist philosophy to a much greater degree. Once they are ready for public and judicial service, the work they do, if given the opportunities, will further restore a country that respects individual freedom and human dignity. Alexander Hamilton once said, "There's a certain enthusiasm in liberty." Even amidst the threats and challenges and chaos we face right now, we should be joyful about what we are doing. Our work is about something much bigger than ourselves and the present moment, and what we do matters to and resonates with most Americans. They are counting on us to finish what we have started. Thank you again for this wonderful award. I will treasure it always. Have a good night.
Once again, Paul E. Singer.
It is a distinct honor to present one of this year's Alexander Hamilton Awards to investor, philanthropist, and my good friend, Dan Loeb. Dan began his fund, Third Point, in 1995 with $3 million. Today, Third Point manages almost $14 billion. Along the way, Dan has built an impressive track record of generating strong returns for his investors by engaging with companies around the world to improve their performance and also investing in many types of credit securities. But we're not here to honor Dan for his investing prowess. Rather, what impresses me most about Dan is how he has entered the fray in vital areas of public life with his generosity, his leadership, and his strength of character. Dan once held very different views of the world, but to his credit, he has seen the light, and I'm delighted to have seen his metamorphosis to a passionate, informed, and persuasive defender and amplifier of freedom, opportunity, free speech, rule of law, private enterprise, and quality education for all. During Dan's 5 years as chairman of Success Academy Charter Schools, whose founder, Eva Moskowitz, is a past recipient of the Hamilton Award, the number of schools in its network increased from 22 to 46, giving thousands of disadvantaged kids the opportunity for an excellent education. Thanks in no small part to the remarkable success of Success Academy, recent polling commissioned by MI found that fully 71% of New Yorkers support school choice, with an even higher support among minority communities. And while Dan's leadership on this issue has provoked a choir of critics and adversaries, Dan has never flinched. His moral courage and intestinal fortitude has and have been an example to us all and deserve our respect and recognition, especially in this climate of woke mobs and cancel culture. Additionally, at a time when capitalism is often maligned, not only on the left, but increasingly within some corners of the right, Dan has been the outlier CEO to speak up on behalf of free enterprise. September 13th of this year marked the 50th anniversary of Milton Friedman's seminal essay, published in the New York Times Magazine, quote, "The social responsibility of business is to increase its profits," close quote. The Times asked many influencers recently, from business and academia, to revisit Friedman's argument, including Dan, who took the opportunity to address current debates over redefining the purpose of the corporation and the misguided yet trendy idea of stakeholder capitalism. As Dan explained in his sharp response, quote, Friedman's timeless essay resonates today as corporate America embraces stakeholder capitalism, a popular concept that is inconsistent with the law. Stakeholder capitalism distorts the incentive that prompts investors to risk their capital, the promise of a profit on their investment. So, I share Friedman's concern that a movement towards prioritizing ill-defined stakeholders might allow some executives to pursue personal agendas or simply camouflage their own incompetence until it is starkly revealed by poor shareholder returns. Close quote. It is for this kind of willingness to defend free market capitalism, both in and out of season, that last year MI's Adam Smith Society presented him with its annual award for principled business leadership, and why we are always thrilled when Dan can spend time with the MBAs in our network. Dan, thank you for your leadership, your partnership on so many important issues, and your friendship. On behalf of MI and its trustees, it's an honor to present you with this year's Alexander Hamilton Award.
The Manhattan Institute would now like to welcome 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award recipient Daniel S. Loeb, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Investment Officer of Third Point LLC.
Thank you, Paul, for your kind words. As Churchill supposedly said, if you're not a liberal at 20, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative at 40, you have no brain. It took me a little bit longer, but Paul, thanks for helping me make this change. How fortunate I have been to have a mentor who combines the best qualities of Dick Cheney and Darth Vader. Philanthropy, particularly the brand of activist philanthropy we do, is a team sport, and a pretty hard-hitting one at that. Finding partners who are aligned with your mission is important, and you've been a true partner to me on education, campus free speech, Jewish and Israel causes, and LGBT rights. And I'm grateful to be on the field with a fighter like you. This is actually my second Hamilton Award. My first one was for professional achievement, which I received 30 years after graduating from Columbia College, which was nice because I never got an award for academic achievement while I was there. But this award for philanthropy is much more important to me. It's nice to be recognized for the business you have built, but it is far more rewarding to be appreciated for giving back. Alexander Hamilton, an orphan born in Nevis, is famous for his contributions to the Constitution and many institutions that still exist today, including the U.S. Treasury, the Central Bank, the Coast Guard, and a hit musical. And let's not forget his most important creation of all, the New York Post. Less well known is that he established a charity for orphans that still exists today, Graham Windham, which helps close to 5,000 orphans and children every year. I believe that effective philanthropy is directly tied to personal principles. Mine include advancing individual freedom, the dispersion of power, limited government, and a belief that this kind of a system drives prosperity, innovation, upward mobility, and the pursuit of happiness. I also embrace the idea that a democratic political system and a free enterprise economic system is the best way to reach these goals. To guide my strategy as a philanthropist, I focus on two vital principles: ability and fairness. In terms of ability, the table stakes are all the skills that come with a K-12 public school education. The public school system in our country has failed the children who need it most, children of color from our poorest communities. To me, this is one of our greatest crises, yet most Americans feel that this is just the way it is. I held this view until I saw Waiting for Superman, a documentary about Michelle Rhee's efforts to expand charter schools in D.C., and realized this failure was not due to some intractable problem, but the result of a bureaucracy, corrupt politics, and a monopoly of adults who had organized themselves for their personal benefit at the expense of children and families. To be clear, individual teachers are not to blame for this dysfunction, To this day, I stay in touch with my favorite English teacher from my public high school, who inspired me to love literature, taught me to write, and made it all so much fun. Teachers are some of the most selfless, underappreciated, and valuable people in this country. However, we do them a gross disservice by placing them in dysfunctional organizations. In contrast, charter schools, not all but most, are bastions of hope. The network I've supported over the years and whose board I still sit on, Success Academies, has the best record in the city on standardized tests, SAT scores, and college admissions. As a side note, public charter schools are not a panacea, but they do serve as an alternative, and in theory should offer the best practices that can be implemented in district public schools. To drive the importance of this achievement and the real tale of two cities in our secondary schools, let me share a story Chris Christie told me of a mother who wept with joy after her son got into a charter school via lottery in New Jersey. She said this admission made the difference between her son going to college or going to jail. I thought his account was hyperbolic when I first heard it, until I learned that fully 30% of black boys who don't graduate from high school are incarcerated, and over 60% will be incarcerated at some point during their life. I also try to embrace and promote the core principle of fairness. If we're to bring opportunity to those from underserved communities, we must make sure that they have not only the ability to succeed, but a sense that the system is fair. Nowhere is there less fairness with more dire consequences than in how we administer justice in this country. Interestingly, while this issue is associated with the left and liberals, there's also a strong conservative case for reform, which is why it has become a core philanthropic issue for folks ranging from George Soros to the Koch brothers, and in political circles, Republicans from Mike Lee, John Cornyn, Rick Perry, and even President Trump have been supportive of certain criminal justice reforms. If you are a conservative who believes in the rule of law and in limited government, you must feel comfortable that the criminal justice system will punish criminals, deter crime, and rehabilitate those who have broken the law when possible. But you must also see that we need a system where the punishment fits the crime, and such punishments are equitably applied across race and the socioeconomic spectrum. I didn't think there could be a government-run system worse than our public schools until I saw firsthand the injustices in the criminal justice system. This has prompted me to do work with organizations pursuing systematic change, as well as individual cases of injustices where I felt our voice and capital could right an unjust wrong. We support the Innocence Project, an organization that uses DNA and other scientific techniques to free the falsely accused. They've released hundreds of individuals, some on death row, and some after decades in jail, and changed laws such as the ability of corrupt prosecutors to conceal exculpatory evidence as they did in West Virginia. The individual cases I feel most passionately about are those of Bernard Noble and Michael Giles. Noble, a black man, was arrested in New Orleans for riding his bike the wrong way down a one-way street. Police found 2 grams of marijuana on him. For this, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison due to a few convictions he had in his early 20s for minor drug charges. Initially, I thought a call to Bobby Jindal, the governor, would get him released, as he had already languished in jail for 5 years for this petty crime, leaving behind a thriving catering business and 7 children he supported. Instead, it took us 2 years to change the pot laws in Louisiana so that small amounts of marijuana could no longer be the basis for lengthy sentences. But even then, unfortunately, Bernard was not grandfathered in. After that, we advocated with Justice Action Network to make nonviolent, non-sexual offenders eligible for clemency consideration. Ultimately, after partnering with a local lawyer, he was freed after 8 years. More recently, we've taken up the case of Michael Giles, again an African-American, Air Force vet from a deeply patriotic military family who, after being attacked by a stranger, fired his own legally registered firearm to protect himself. While no one was seriously hurt because of a mandatory minimum sentencing law and with incompetent legal counsel, Giles received a mandatory sentence of 25 years in prison. After our legal appeals were exhausted, we've worked with FAM, Right on Crime, the DeSantis administration, and others in hopes of righting this wrong as soon as possible. These are just a few examples of the types of things we have been doing to reform our criminal justice system. Our North Star, in addition to promoting fairness, has also been to make sure that at no time do we sacrifice safety, which is why we've distanced ourselves from some projects that don't meet that test. We believe the reforms we have worked on will reduce recidivism, promote economic growth, reduce government expenditures, and make us all better for our efforts. These stories provided some examples of our principles in action. But regarding philanthropy overall, I believe the most effective approach requires you to roll up your sleeves and engage as a builder and sometimes as an activist. I've learned 3 especially important things. 1, you should measure the outcomes of your success using real metrics and think about giving as an investment. Try to come up with a return on your invested capital. When possible, consider public-private partnerships to leverage your giving and get the most benefit from a combination of legal advocacy and lobbying for financial support. 2, think big. Your impact can make a difference through generations. The greatest philanthropists, like the Rothschilds or Hamilton himself, not only gave to worthy causes, but they built institutions that would carry on their mission. When I first got involved with Success, they had just a few thousand students at 7 schools running through the 8th grade. Today, they're educating 19,000 scholars K through 12. 3, find a community of like-minded people and support each other in your endeavors. Which brings me in closing to the Manhattan Institute, which I'm proud to support and be part of. I rely on MI for the deep thinking and forward-looking policy prescriptions they provide, which inform my activities. I know MI research will be based on principles we all share and will not be shaped by pressure to be PC. MI's work on cities has been second to none and particularly important given that for the past 6 years, New York City has not been so much led as occupied, largely by ideologues whose vision is very different from our own. This experiment in what they call progressivism, but which is actually quite regressive, has had disastrous results by almost every measure. Despite all this, I remain hopeful and optimistic that the pendulum will swing back, but only if we get involved in our local politics and community and put into action the ideas and policy framework laid out by MI and common sense. So, it is with much humility that I accept this award from MI and also salute my team, led by Jeff Cook McCormick, who's done much of the legwork and multiplied the impact of the dollars we have spent. Mostly I have to thank my wife, Margaret, who was trained as a social worker and has always pushed me to do better and been involved in many of our endeavors. Again, I thank Paul and MI for this award and will continue to do my best to emulate Hamilton, the OG capitalist philanthropist, and validate the recognition you have given me this evening. Thank you very much.
And now, once again, ladies and gentlemen, Reihan Salam.
Thank you for being with us tonight, and congratulations again to our award winners. I wish you and your families well, and I'd encourage all of you to subscribe to the Manhattan Institute's newsletters to stay up to date on our work. Thank you all so much, and good night.
We thank you for watching tonight's special event cast of the Manhattan Institute's 2020 Alexander Hamilton Award Dinner. Visit the Manhattan Institute's website to learn more about all of tonight's speakers and award honorees. And please, if you're new to us and our mission, join us by making a contribution and subscribing to our email newsletters and social media channels. Visit manhattan-institute.org.